We discuss the ongoing conflict between cyclists and motorists and what they can do to coexist on the road. Plus, we cover the new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross SUV and answer audience questions. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Keith Barry.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
And because May is Bicycle Safety Month, we're going to focus our initial segment on bicycle and car safety and driver-cyclist interactions, because each of us have had different involvement with cycling. Mike and I are cyclists, avid cyclists. Keith has lived in an urban area and had to interact with cyclists in a totally different way. And it's a key thing that we all as drivers, need to be aware of, but also people who are cyclists. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background first, and we'll follow up.
So, I've been cycling for almost 25 years. I started when I was about 5, so do the math. I'm still a young guy.
Yeah, since almost the womb.
Yeah. And I've had, I come from both sides. I'm a car driver, but I see a lot of things that cyclists do that are not smart, that make it worse for cyclists. At the same time, I've been hit by a car, and my ex-wife was badly hit by a car when I was on the same ride as her. So, it hits close to home for me, the cycling safety.
Yeah, for me, I've cycled for maybe 15 years now, and I've gotten really into it. And you go on group rides and you see good and bad etiquette, but when you're out there in the group rides or even by alone, you see the bad etiquette by most car drivers. Not all of them are bad. Let's just start this. Not all cyclists are bad, and it's probably a minority. Not all drivers are bad, but there's a lot of statistics I'm going to get into, and there's a lot of deaths out there. 840 cyclists were killed in 2016. That's a huge number, and it unfortunately has been going up.
Well, that's what I think of, because that's sort of my experience with cycling. I'm from the Boston area and did a lot of commuting in the city, and because of my job, had to drive a car in the city.
Right.
And it was the least efficient way of getting anywhere. And I'm a bit of a radical about this in some ways, that I think that even though I love cars and love writing about them and driving, that in certain areas, out here we're in a suburban, almost rural area.
Yep.
But back home, there are areas where I think cars just should not be. And it should just be turned over to pedestrians and cyclists, because the two just don't mix. And the easiest way to move a lot of people is on bikes, public transit, and walking.
Well, one of the questions is, since your experience, and you've said some interesting things about leaving Boston, coming here, going back to Boston. What about cycling lanes, and also, how you think about it?
Oh, totally. So, the thing I have to remind myself is just what you said about how easy it is to, have a fatal crash on a bike. And, even if the cyclist is doing something wrong, or, isn't following the rules the way that I want them to, or isn't signaling, or annoyed me in some way, if I get mad about that, or if I don't give them enough space when I'm behind the wheel of a car, I could kill them if I make a mistake. If I don't look, I could kill someone. And that's what I think whenever I get behind the wheel when I'm driving, commuting through Cambridge.
Right.
It's different around here. When you encounter cyclists, it's totally different. You're usually coming around a corner, and it's some recreational cyclists.
Right.
These aren't commuters going to work, and it's a totally different environment. But in Boston, we're getting bike lanes. We're kind of starting to. The infrastructure, I don't think is good enough. But there. I've trained myself to, check my blind spot when I'm turning to make sure that I don't, right hook someone and cut them off and hurt them.
And that's what we don't have out here is bike lanes, especially on these back roads, Right. So that's why it's maybe even more critical as a cyclist to be mindful that there's other people on the road.
Right.
And you mentioned group rides. Group rides is actually, I think, the safest way to go on a bicycle ride, because you're more visible, the whole group, whether it's 5 guys or 50 guys, everyone's going to see you, right?
Right.
But the problem is when you have a group ride, quite often those group riders are annoying car drivers because they're taking up too much of the lane, or they're not riding single file.
Right, so they're riding parallel.
Just because the laws say you can take up the lane doesn't mean you have to take up the lane. And when I lived in California, they have a lot of really wide bike lanes out there, and so you're supposed to ride in the bike lane. And I'd be on these group rides, of like 30 to 50 people. And so the bike lane's wide enough to ride 2 or 3 abreast.
Right.
And yet sometimes they would still move over and be taking up part of, it would be 4 lanes of traffic, two lanes this way and 2 lanes the other way. And they'd be taking up one of those 2 travel lanes.
But John, you were talking about reasons why cyclists might want to do that though, right?
There's times where you need to almost be a defensive, offensive rider. Because you're making yourself present. When you use something, I think we're going to have some B-roll, some footage here. Like, it's going to show bikes with, lights. Lights make you really visible. Rear light, front light. Some people may say, oh, it's so dorky. Well, you know what? It's safe. And if anything that gives you visibility is better than being cool. I totally am with Mike in the sense of, people pacelining and rolling off or they're talking. That's some of the habits.
Cyclists get into this mindset that when they're on these group rides, because they think they're going really fast and they're doing all this training and it feels like racing, it's like they get out there and they forget that there's other cars around. Right. Just instances where we come to a stoplight and we've got a group of 10, 15 guys, and now they're oblivious to the fact that there's a car behind them who wants to go right on red.
Yeah.
But because they're not moving over and taking up the lane the way a car would, they're just spread out all the way across the lane. Now that car is waiting there. They could be going right on red and they're not. So cyclists have to remember, you're not the only ones on the road. You have to give room to cars, and you want to do things like make eye contact with the car, and you want to stop at stop signs. I mean, when I first started riding, I'll be honest, I didn't stop at stop signs. I would roll through red lights, and I finally got smart and realized this is insane. You're supposed to follow the same rules as the car, so you're supposed to come.
If you want that respect.
So what happens is cyclists don't do that, and then cars just are like, okay, this is why so many car drivers are annoyed with cyclists, because the cyclists feel they don't have to follow the rules of the road. So if you follow the rules of the road and you make eye contact with the driver, you wave, they give you room, you wave to them, say thank you for that. I think of it each day as trying to bring another car driver back to not hating cyclists.
That's true. One of the things I want to jump into, because it's a big segment that we could talk about. 840 pedocyclists, it's a DOT term, killed in 2016. 829 in 15. So you're looking at an increase. Only 701. Only 701. I mean, I'm not trying to knock that down, but in 2007. So it's been going up. Most fatalities actually were not at intersections. 30% were at intersections. Only 4% of fatalities in bike lanes. The majority happened in daylight, and then the next largest is in dark. Only 5% at dawn and dusk. So it's not like, oh, the light is hard and you see people. A staggering number in 2016, 59 of the deaths were kids, and then 130 were for people 65 and older. So, and a lot of those happened in Florida. 138 deaths were in Florida, 147 in California. So great weather and dense urban areas.
With the rise of distracted driving and people on their, car drivers being on their phones, it's so easy. All it takes is a second, and you've run you've hit that cyclist. That's the car's here, cyclist here. You're looking down at your phone, and you veer slightly over and run over that cyclist. That's all it takes.
Yep.
So.
Well, one of the things I wanted, and I'm not trying to cut you off, Keith, but we talked about some tips, that from both a driver's perspective as well as a cyclist perspective. And I wanted to toss it to Keith because you had a really good, interesting one that would help, I think, with all driving etiquette.
Yeah, I think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of every road user. So when you become a vulnerable road user, when you're a pedestrian, when you're a cyclist, there is the infrastructure in this country is built for cars in many places, and I personally don't think that it should be. But in many places in the country, obviously out here it's different than in cities.
But it's changing. It's evolving.
It's evolving, and I think that the best way to figure out where the reasons why other road users act the way they do is to get behind the wheel of a car. If you're a cyclist, if you only drive, get on a bike and get out there. Be a pedestrian. Literally learn how to share the road. I would actually really like it if car drivers, if everyone got the chance to drive, just do a mile in an 18-wheeler and see how hard that is.
Sure.
You get a lot of respect for those people. But yeah.
Mike, you had some thoughts for cyclists, about signaling and traffic.
Yeah,
and all
I
that.
mean, you know, obviously always signal when you're making a left or right turn. I mean, John's so old school. He goes like this to go left, and he goes this, the old Boy Scout approach or whatever, to go right.
So traffic sees me. I always feel that if you do this, you're blocked.
Yeah, make a big, you know, hand signal either way. We use, you know, stopping, you know, put our hands back when we're stopping.
And as,
like I said,
as a driver, when I come up to a, you know, there's a bike lane next to me and I know that the bike traffic is going to cut across me, I always make eye contact with the first rider in that group who's waiting for the light to let them know I see them and they can go, that I'm not just going to plow into them because I'm looking at my phone.
Because, I mean, on group rides, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just roll through stop signs, roll stoplights, and if you, as a group or even on your own, make the point that you're going to stop, and then the car waves you through, then you're like, oh, thank you, and then everyone has a better day because of it.
Right. It's the same as some cars pull up to a four-way, and the one guy says like, "You go, I got it."
And also, I mean, wear your helmet. I mean, it's surprising. We looked up some helmet laws, and it's surprising. First of all, there's no helmet laws for adults anywhere in any state in the country, although there are some city ordinances that require some helmet laws. But like in Connecticut, it's only if you're 15 years or younger, then you have to wear a helmet. But so wear your helmet. My personal thing, kind of stuck up. If I see a guy who's not wearing a helmet, I won't wave to him. If he waves to me first, I'll wave to him.
What a great loss. What a great loss.
But, because it's like the helmets, actually, we had helmets. We had props. But someone thought we would look dorky if we were wearing our helmets for this segment. But the helmets are
Luckily, we weren't wearing spandex.
Right.
I mean, I had
no one wants to
bibs,
see that.
I had it all.
I think I'm wearing spandex.
Yeah.
I think it's by accident, though.
The helmets are so light and have so much good ventilation these days. There's really honestly no reason to not wear a helmet.
Cracked mine in, and I went over the handlebars at about 5 miles an hour, hit a pothole, and I'm going to touch on that in a second, and cracked the helmet and didn't have a concussion. So the helmet took the brunt of a 5 mile an hour accident.
It's amazing how much they how light they are, yet how strong they are. The other thing you mentioned, lights. The rear red flashing lights are very inexpensive these days. They're very easy to put on your bike. You can recharge them on your computer.
I think we have some footage showing how intense they are.
And same with the front lights these days. We used to use we grew up, we used the generators where you put the generator over on the tire. But these days, the front lights are, again, pretty inexpensive. They're very easy to recharge, and they're quite bright. And so, I mean, those are the kinds of things that if you think you're going to be riding at all close to dusk, make sure you have those lights.
Sure. Two final thoughts. First of all, for drivers, look, you don't want to go over a pothole. You're worried about the wheel. You're worried about being a bump. Well, think about a cyclist going over a pothole. They are going to bend their wheel and fall in front of you. They are going to blow out their tire and fall in front of you. So keep your eyes up for yourself, but also think about what the cyclist is doing.
Yeah, if the cyclist swerves in front of you, it's not because they're a jerk. I mean, they could be a jerk, but it also could be that they're literally saving their skin.
And also think about the speed differential. The cyclist may be doing 20 miles an hour and you're doing 30. If you're going to make a right turn, wait 10 seconds, wait 5 seconds. You're going to get to your parking space. You're going to get to the big box.
You're going to get to the red light at the same time.
But that speed differential, if you cut in front, the cyclist is probably going to clip you.
You know what we didn't discuss? Tips for deer. I want to give tips to deer, not a cyclist how to handle deer, because I once got hit by a deer. I didn't hit the deer hit me.
I think we'll have to do that in
another episode.
The flora, fauna, and drivers
range for the hearing
episode.
I think. Yeah.
We're going to totally pivot and go to cars now. And we're going to focus on a new car that
we're talking cars.
We're now back to talking cars.
Excellent.
A new vehicle came in. I'm going to toss it to you, Keith. The Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, small SUV.
Yeah, it is a small SUV. So I know that, obviously you can find out what CR thinks about Mitsubishis.
Yep.
I don't really have anything wrong with the Outlander Sport. I think that if you're looking for an inexpensive car with a warranty and actually really good all-wheel drive system, the Outlander Sport, which is Mitsubishi's kind of current compact SUV, it's fine. It's very inexpensive. You can find it brand new for not a lot of money.
Right.
And then
I do want to inject, the Mitsubishi feelings are, from our test data. So it's how they perform just like all the other vehicles and in their class against their peers.
Exactly. I mean, it's not going to be, no Mitsubishi is going to be the quietest, the most luxurious, et cetera. The Eclipse Cross, though, is just baffling to me because Mitsubishi already makes a perfectly decent, serviceable, affordable compact SUV. And then they come out with this other car, which is has less interior space.
Yep.
Like, I think kind of an ugly exterior, and it's $28,000. That's the thing which just blows my mind, that it takes away the one thing about that car that actually kind of made it charming.
Well, Monty, since you kind of blend both testing as well as editorial or content work, what's it been like for driving?
Well, it almost feels like this is a vehicle that Mitsubishi, they felt like they needed a new vehicle, and they just sort of cobbled this together, put on this new exterior, which actually, I will say, I think it looks better in person than it looked in photos. I don't know if that's praise or not, but I actually don't think it looks that terrible in person. But it really feels like they cobbled this together as quickly as they could, and they didn't totally finish the R&D.
Well, it's funny. Andrew, who's over on the camera too, maybe, he even said it's sort of like, the teacher was watching all the designers, and he's like, okay, pencils down.
Okay, right.
Send it to the dealerships.
Yeah, it's got this real high-tech, like, remote touch style touchpad.
Right.
The infotainment system.
The infotainment system, which is stupid, but at least it looks high-tech.
And it's funny because with that infotainment system, it almost feels like they took, they looked at all the worst infotainment systems, and then they took a little piece from each one.
Benchmark the worst ones. Yeah.
Like that Lexus, sort of pad thing, and
right.
The touchscreen is far away, and there's no, like Honda, there's no volume or tuning knobs. There's just some things there that don't make sense. I will say, when you get into the car initially, there's some soft touch here and there. It doesn't look terrible inside.
I like that upholstery.
But but once you start using it and you start driving it around, and it's again sort of like how it looks okay when you first get into it until you get deeper. Same thing when you first start driving it. It's pretty quick off the line. It's got this turbo 4-cylinder, and it has a CVT, continuously variable transmission. But then it seems like it runs out of steam pretty quickly.
And so it's a little wallowy.
Yeah.
And, one of the things like you touched on, Keith, and $28,000 is a lot. I mean, that's Subaru Forester. That's Honda CR-V. That's RAV4, Ford Escape, for sport. I mean, the old Eclipses are crying to have their name associated with this
out
vehicle.
of their folded headlights. They're just
we should say we haven't tested this yet, so we're not making final proclamations.
Yeah, we're not, but it's just not it doesn't really seem like a full baked effort. And again, at that price, it's a challenge to really, for people, to justify going and shopping that when there are so many good vehicles. So, like you said,
there aren't as many dealers around. Mitsubishi is a very small dealer network. So even though it has that great warranty, where are you going to get it fixed if you live 30 miles away from the closest dealer?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're still testing it, like Mike said. Check back in the next couple weeks for our final results. So we're going to switch over to some audience questions right now, because we've been getting a lot of really great ones to our iMessage account, which is TalkingCars@iCloud.com. Our first one is about used cars. I'm looking to buy my first used car for college between $8,000 and $10,000. I'd like suggestions for anything from a compact hatchback to a midsize crossover, but it has to be reliable, not drive like a boat, not be as common as a Prius, and be from 2005 to 2013. Thanks a lot for the help. So I'm going to throw it to Mike first. What did you come up with as a suggestion?
I came up with two.
Okay. So you're doing extra homework.
I give the audience more for their money is the way I like to look at it.
He doesn't do that at work, but he gives it for the audience. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Well, they're who really count.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I came up with a Honda Fit, 2009 to 2012 Honda Fit, and 2009 to 2012 Mazda 3. Both are reliable, and both are pretty fun to drive. The Mazda 3 being a little bit more fun to drive, the Honda Fit being, have more usable interior, and you can get both with manual transmissions. The Mazda 3, comes as a sedan or a hatchback. Obviously, this person would want the hatchback. I honestly think you can't go wrong with either one.
Good choices.
For me, the Mazda 3 is the more fun car to drive, but I could totally see a college kid driving either one of these cars and having lots of space and having a little bit of fun. And I honestly think...
a friend of mine just said his daughter's looking at a Mazda 3 or Civic, and he said, I think we're going to go Mazda 3 hatch, college. So it's right there in the ballpark. Keith, what about you?
I know he's looking for something that isn't totally common, and I'm going to recommend the Civic. But it's sort of my go-to recommendation for someone who's looking for something. You're going to have the rest of your life to buy really interesting cars. And
the guy who's not married and doesn't have kids.
Well, but I got all my interesting cars when I was in college, and now nothing can be. I have nothing to look forward to. So
there's still plenty
none
of
them
French
ran.
cars you could find.
None of them actually ran, but I had
There's
them.
Renaults, or
Yeah.
Citroens. There's a lot of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. Sterlings,
I
plenty of
My
Sterlings.
family had a Sterling, so.
So this,
digress.
I think, again, you can get a stick shift. The Civic, it's reliable. You might lose it in a parking lot, but if you really want to, make yourself stand out, you can rebadge it like an Acura 1.6 EL and tell everyone you're Canadian.
Oh boy.
Esoteric?
Nah,
Esoteric?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I went totally off. 2007 Acura TSX.
Okay.
The TSX is a recommended used car. It's reliable. We don't go to 2007, but it's a solid car. And I also went for a sister vehicle, the 2006 Acura RSX.
That's a fun car.
Yeah.
Super sporty hatchback, two-door.
I'll be honest, I forgot about that.
It's the down the road from the Integra with the
Yeah.
four
Oh,
lights and
absolutely, yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
That's when Honda was such a drivetrain, engine and transmission company, made sporty fun cars.
And you don't see those too much anymore.
You
So
don't.
that
I
kind of
noticed
goes to
one when
the
I saw
person's
one the
point.
other day. Yeah.
Yep, not common. So those are the choices. I think you can find some really good cars.
A lot of love for Honda.
A lot of love for
Yeah.
Honda there. Older Honda again. When they were fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Our second question. I've purchased 6 brand new vehicles in my life, and I've never been told by the dealer to check the owner's manual for break-in procedures. Seems to me that dealers need to do a better job about informing consumers about the manufacturer's break-in procedures. So do you guys have any tips?
Well, my first tip is you should not be breaking into cars.
That's
Really.
That is
They
very
belong
true.
to someone else.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Slim Jims don't work as much.
No, they really don't.
So
Yeah.
seriously, I know Mike went over to our shop manager, John Ibbotson, to talk about
Right,
this.
I talked to Big John, and and also keep in mind we break in all of our test cars for 2,000 miles.
Again, driving, not Slim
Right.
Jimming. Right.
For a variety of reasons, not just the engine. I mean, because that's what you're really trying to do is you're trying to break in all the moving parts in an engine so that they wear properly down the road. That's why you do this break-in period. We also are doing it for tires and brakes for our test cars. That's why we go a little longer than the usual break-in period for a car. But so that's why you want to do it. But first of all, I think the car salesman, the car dealer should tell you. Sure. And so I did a little digging, at some of our cars that are in our garage over there, our usual studio. And the 2019 Jeep Cherokee says, because all these manuals differ actually in terms of what they tell people. And they say, drive your car moderately during the first 300 miles. After the first 60 miles, speeds up to 50 to 55 miles per hour are desirable. While cruising, brief full throttle acceleration within the limits of local traffic laws contribute to good break-in. Wide open throttle and low gear can be detrimental and should be avoided. The 2018 BMW X2 says moving parts need to begin working together smoothly during break-in. Do not use the launch control. I wasn't even aware our X2 had launch control, but
moving parts working together, it's like adding someone new to the podcast.
yeah.
And I just need a little break-in
and
period.
I'm not sure how well it's going.
Yeah,
but-
by the 5th episode, maybe.
And then they
Yeah.
say up to 1,200 miles, do not exceed the maximum engine and road speed. Avoid full load or kick down under all circumstances. And then from 1,200 miles, engine and vehicle speed can gradually be increased. But the bottom line more than anything is vary your speed, vary the way you drive the car,
Without being extreme.
Yeah, so don't drive it crazy hard. Don't do a lot of full throttle stuff.
Yep.
But don't at the same time, don't baby it, and don't just do the first 500 miles on the highway. You want to be varying the engine speed. You want to vary the way you drive the car. And
Well, it's
that's
tough because you
honestly-
want to drive you get your new car and you want to drive it. And you want to get out there and see what it can do, but kind of resist that temptation, right?
Well, and we've all bought cars for Consumer Reports, for test cars, and I don't know if any of us have visited the service department, for example, that they've taken us over to say, oh, here's at least the service department where you can ask that question. You
mean when you're first buying the
when
car?
you're buying the
when you're
car,
picking up the car?
I mean, the only thing that you get is you get the delivery and you get I'll go through a lot of the how to use the infotainment system.
Right.
But please give me 5s on my survey
Yeah.
because give me a 5.
Otherwise, they're going to fire me tomorrow.
Right,
Yeah.
they're gonna fire, and that's so from the manufacturer to be in order to give money, back to the dealership, and so that the salesperson can actually earn some money because they don't make a lot of money per car. And it would be great, and it would actually probably help them get their 5s if there was a bit of explanation about, hey, this is how you handle it to begin with.
But and the key thing is for all you people out there, I mean, read the manual. Usually it says engine break-in or break-in period. At the back of the manual, go to that page, just see what they say, and follow close to what they say. It's just smart.
Yep. Well, I think we're going to have that as the last word on this episode. So thanks for watching. We really appreciate the questions. So again, like we said, our iMessage account is TalkingCars@iCloud.com. Check the show notes below for everything that we talked about and links to all the information. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
I would listen to this. This is the podcast I would want to listen to.
This is good stuff right here.